All right, everybody, welcome back to Dad's Guide to the Galaxy, where fatherhood meets knowledge, the channel where we explore fascinating topics that often go unnoticed, asking the important questions. So, in today's video, we're diving deep into a discussion about mass genocide rooted in greed, lies, brought to you by one of the original king of thieves. Now, you may or may not think the same way about this, but I guarantee you after today's discussion, you're going to question some things. So, the one and the only Bill Gates, that is, subject has caught it's caught the attention of not only us, but it seems the mainland media in regards to a few things. So we're going to be questioning the details and reasoning behind the lack of why people aren't paying more attention to this, and we're going to kind of go over some topics and break it down to help us better understand what it is that we're looking at here. So get ready. Let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to jump over to another view here because I want to start. Well, actually, before I do that, let's kind of break this down. So, as a father, I try to stay as involved as possible in the cooking, picking out foods, knowledge, information, things like that. Old school, raised by my grandparents. Grandmother was a farmer. She loved gardening. Could grow absolutely anything, and I mean anything. Taught me how to cross-pollinate and all that fun stuff. But when it came to, consuming, she had her big rule of thumb: we didn't buy groceries and vegetables from the store. We didn't buy fruit from the store. If you wanted a particular fruit plant, you grew it yourself. And the reason why is, even back then, a lot of the concern regarding pesticides was not as mainstream as it should be, but there were a lot of things happening with the different types of pesticides that were being used. And if you ever lived by a farm, you knew not to go out on certain days when they were crop dusting, because the air transferred a lot of that to different regions and areas, and if you breathe that in, it wreaked havoc on your body and everything else. So, she, coming up from that environment, knew these things. Apologies, if I'm taking long breaths here, but so that's issue number one. So she taught me, hey, this is what you do for your plants, this is what you do for your vegetables, and this is how you grow them. The other good thing about that is when you grow your own vegetables, they taste different. There's a flavor, there's just something about it. It just makes the meal, right? And every type of tomato has a different taste. It shouldn't be bland and nasty. I hear so many people say often, I hate tomatoes because they're gross. Well, they should never be gross. If your tomatoes are gross, there's something wrong there. They should have a, acidic taste to them. They should be amplified with different spices and salts and other things. And having a slice of tomato with some salt and lemon or lime, depending on where you're from, is one of the greatest snacks you can have. But they should have a flavor. They should make your mouth tingle a little bit. The ones you get from the store are just disgusting. And there's a reason why they're disgusting. Now, one of the big things that we do is we put pesticides on our food, and there's been a lot of changes in how pesticides are being applied. But, and I say this because our wonderful King of Thieves, Bill Gates, has and is associated to a company that's changed some of the rules. And they've changed it in a way that it pretty much manipulates how it affects us and what we see, right? Information Act, we should be able to know what's going into our products. The FDA should be able to publish all the ingredients, and that isn't what's happening in the scenario. And now the company that we're talking about that Bill Gates is associated with is a company called Apeel. Now we're going to go into some things here. So let me jump over to that screen, and I will show you what we're talking about here. But, all right. So we're going to jump into here. So this is the Apeel company. So I'm sure if you've been out grocery shopping with your spouse or children or by yourself, you've noticed this little logo right here, this little green and almost looks like an orange kind of thing. So the reason why this logo is important, you want to make sure you pay attention for it and you want to identify for it, is because this Apeel company is, they advertise that they're here to protect and extend the life of the produce and the products that they have their pesticides or what are coating placed on, right? And they've registered it as organic. Well, we're going to bring into some questions for that. But what I want you to do is I want you to look at something and I'm going to show you some information. Okay. So, Apeel, essentially what it does is it covers the fruits and vegetables in a chemical powder coating that's supposed to extend the life of the product. Well, that's great for manufacturers and farmers and shippers, but it's not really great for people. Let me explain. So with this Apeel company, they have a lot of information out there about, what it does. Seeing is believing, how many days can you wait before it goes bad, blah, blah. All these different vegetables and fruits are just a few of the examples of what they put this product on. Now, if you've ever eaten any of these, like say, for example, an apple, or let's say a cucumber, or let's say a mango, depending on where you're from, you don't peel those. And normally washing certain things with just, water and soap doesn't necessarily mean you're getting off all the pesticides. There are some chemicals out there that you can spray on and wipe off or use as a wash to help remove some of them, but you're truly never getting them all off. Now, you would think that with a little bit of protection from a peel, like for example with a grapefruit or a lemon or oranges or mandarins or limes or lemons or even an avocado, for example, that you would be, okay, well, if I remove the peel, whatever's inside I'm protected from, I don't even have to worry about washing. But here's kind of what happens in this scenario. Now, with Bill Gates doing this, something he said a number of years back in a TED Talk has resonated with a lot of people online because he references a discussion where, here we'll scroll, this is a kind of a news feed that somebody did regarding what he says. Now, you see the section we have highlighted right here. First, we have got a population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to a 9 billion, right? Now, if we do a really great job about new vaccines, healthcare, reproduction, health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. Now, let me back up a minute here. I think anybody and everybody has seen science fiction movies. Let's say you've seen Star Wars or Star Trek, and the more technology you have, the more you help save lives and extend lives, right? So if we have new vaccines, we have better healthcare, we have better reproductive health services. How are we lowering that? We're in most cases extending the current life of the individuals we have, which means that the population overall would become healthier and more extended. The only thing we have to worry about is the resources. Now, with the planet being as abundantly as it is, those resources are pretty extensive for some areas. There are some things that we have to be concerned of, and that's deforestation, things like that. But vaccines, especially new vaccines, should not reduce the population by 10 to 15%. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, it's taken out of context for those of you who are familiar with the TED Talk where he discusses these things. No, it's not. He says this verbatim, and then he goes on later in the same video, which is about 30 minutes long, to talk about his one wish, right? So you see this section here, his innovation to zero. So this is his wish. It's a very concrete wish that was invented, that he invented this technology for. And this is his speaking verbatim. This isn't somebody else translating it. It isn't in a foreign language. This is him speaking directly to the audience and to the TED attendees. If you gave me only one wish for the next 50 years, I could pick who's president. I could pick a vaccine, which is something I love, or I could pick that this thing that's half the cost with no CO2 gets invented. This is the wish I would pick. This is the one with the greatest impact. If we don't get this wish, the division between the people who think short-term and long-term will be terrible, between the U.S. and China, between poor countries and rich, and most of all, the lives of those 2 billion will be far worse. Now, we have more than 2 billion people on this planet currently right now. And between the nations of China and U.S., I'm sure that's a lot larger just within our two nations, because we are two of the more populated regions on the planet. But the way that he worded this, he would reduce the CO2 emissions. He's buying up farmlands. He's buying up companies that, or partnering with companies that are producing products that encapsulate the food we eat. He's a proponent to reducing population because these are his words, not anybody else's. You can't interpret these differently. This is taking it verbatim. And he does have association with, you know, talks and discussions where he's talked about people being allergic to red meat and not being able to eat that, and then, you know, being able to save and help those who can. And just today there was something on the news in regards to the Lone Star tick, and now 450,000 people being affected by this tick as of recently. So the CDC is all up in arms, which is interesting because they just approved the use of artificial or lab-grown chickens. So, you have a tick deer-borne disease that now puts out a allergy to those so they can't eat red meat. And you've approved a product that's artificially or lab-grown. You own a company that puts something on top of fruits or vegetables that we're going to discuss here in a minute. And now you have this grand scheme of things to reduce the population with new vaccines. It kind of sounds like there's a theme or plan and a process going on here. So let's kind of jump in here, right? And now, one of the things that we had earlier on from the very beginning, or the storage of, in order to increase lifespan of fruits and vegetables in our food, is the refrigerator, right? We reduce the temperature, which reduces the interaction, decomposition, bacterial, viral growth, fungal growth on our food, and the storage of that food is now something that stays longer. Well, that isn't necessarily the case anymore here, and we're going to jump out of these windows here, but I wanted you to kind of get a good understanding of what we're looking at. So Apeel is actually a company called Organipeel, and that's how they've been marketed under the EPA for the United States Environmental Protection Agency. But under these EPA ratings, their documentation that they've supported and put out to the internet list them as registered under Organipeel, and this is for Apeel directly. So when you go to look up Apeel, you will find that it comes in as Organipeel. The Apeel technology, and they're calling it a technology. Now, being on the back end of technology side of things, you always question what that really means. But we're going to take a look at this sentence right here, right? So, on the basis of information furnished by the registrant, by this company, the above named pesticide is hereby registered under Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Acts. Now, I kind of broke this down into different tabs because I wanted you guys to see the importances of the details, and I didn't really want to forget a missing point for discussion. As we scroll down this same document, you're going to see where it even gets more interesting. So normally on any food labels or drug labels, you have to have what the contents are or what there is contained within. Organipeel doesn't. What they do is they provide a definition of what their company is. So they provide reduction of spoilage and decay caused by non-public health microorganisms on the surface of unprocessed fruits and vegetables. Well, it's a natural product. It's not really processed, so you can go out to your yard and pick off a tree, an apple, or whatever, and wash it with some soap and water and eat it. But for whatever reason, that's not the case here, right? But their active ingredients, citric acid, and citric acid can be identified as, I guess, organic, and that's 0.66% by weight. And other ingredients, well, I guess we're going to have to guess what those are because there's nothing else listed, but those come in for a total of 99.6 or 99.34%. So that's, I don't know about you, but that's the rest of everything else that's in there. So what else is in this thing? Nowhere else in this does it state where or what it's made out of. Now, as you can see here, right directly underneath this, it says keep out of reach of children. Well, if you're putting this on fruits and vegetables, and we ask our children to eat more fruits and vegetables, then either one of two things has to happen. Either those products have to be safe for our children to eat, or as parents, we have to make sure that we go in there and not only remove everything that we need from the peel, from the skin, from washing it, desanitizing it, whatever, more so than we've ever had to do before. So one, A lot of times as parents, we just grab an apple, say, hey, here, eat this, go ahead. That doesn't really happen too often. But they have a precautionary statement here as well, and it's hazardous to humans and domestic animals. Now, let's just take this into consideration here for a second. You have a product that you're telling me will increase the life of the produce or fruits that is being sent out, which benefits the farmers, which benefits the manufacturers, which benefits processing plants and everybody else. So their pockets grow bigger because now they're not seeing as much waste. But it can't be consumed because it's hazardous to humans and domesticated animals, which is the entire population. Now, the caution underneath that is it causes moderate eye irritation, and you want to avoid with eyes, clothing, you want to wear safety glasses when handling, washing thoroughly with soap and water after handling, and before eating, drinking, chewing gum, using tobacco, or using the toilet. That's... And, honestly, I kind of have to think about this here for a second, because I don't know about you, but that's pretty interesting. I've never really had an instance where I've had to worry about whether or not touching a piece of fruit and then touching the toilet could be prone to accidents. Now, the reason why they say that is there's pores all over your body, and how you absorb things, even when you take a shower, or let's say the steam of something, it absorbs into your pores and your skin, and it absorbs through your body even faster than if you were to submerge yourself in it or even consume it. So there are some issues there. Now, it mentions it's a microorganism that it's fighting, right? Well, I mean, obviously, single-cell organisms, microorganisms, they're all very, very tiny. But what does that mean for the product? So if the powder coating needs to prevent these microorganisms from entering even the smallest of pores on these fruits and vegetables, then what does that do for us? Well, if we go further down to the end of the document, as you can see, this is the last page of the 4, you actually see where it says Organic Peel is a registered antimicrobial pesticide. So being a antimicrobial pesticide, I wanted to put this into comparison to a couple of things, right? And it tells you storage and disposal, container disposal, and all this. Now, I know what you're thinking, and I know there's going to be some people out there, well, that's just, the pesticide directly, or the powder directly. God forbid anybody were to fall into this. I mean, I can only imagine the supervillain that would pop out would be resistant to everything and anything, if not some weird mutation. But all joking aside, let's see what just general Google comes up with when you do antimicrobial fungicide, right? So, wait, Simple Green. Oh, I use that for my bathroom. Oh, Zep. I use that for my floors, to clean the grout, to clean other things. Oh my God, MediClean. This is something I used for a cleaning company that I had way back in the day to make sure I mesh with OSHA standards. Some of these will actually eat the skin right off your body. And we're using this to coat and encase our fruits and vegetables. Now, I'm sure it can't be that bad, right? I mean, God forbid that, it's going to eat the material away. Well, they're using it as a powdered form. So as a powdered form, the active agent probably is misted on, and that's how it dries. If you've ever looked at some of them, normally when you go into the store, you see that some are oily and some are dry to the touch. Well, there's a reason why, because those oily fruits and vegetables actually have a different kind of coating, and it's more organic. We're going to get to that here in a minute, but let's say this is a fungicide. Let's actually look at the pesticide, right? So, antimicrobial pesticide. Antimicrobial pesticides are substances, mixtures, and substances used to destroy or suppress the growth of harmful microorganisms such as bacteria, viruses, fungal, or inanimate objects and surfaces. Well, fruits and vegetables are not inanimate objects. I mean, yes, they are in a sense, but they're something we consume. These are elements where I don't even know how you could actively say, I'm not going to clean my vegetables with this material that I have laying around the house and then wash it off or try to wash it off with soap and water, because I'll tell you right now, it's not going to happen. There are some of these chemicals that contain ingredients, for example, lye, which continues to break down the molecules of cells around your hand or whatever it's attacking, essentially preventing you from being able to simply wash it away with soap and water. You're standing there for about 15 minutes washing your hands before you get to the point where it's actually washed off. I'm not doing that for every single fruit and vegetable that I have, and no one in this world does that. No one's going to stick this stuff in a basket of water and say, hey, we're going to leave this here and we're going to leave it to decontaminate, because guess what? This is going to spread to the water, and then now you have these molecules bonded with the molecules of the water, and now it's contaminating other fruits and cross-contaminating, and you're not really getting this rinsed or washed off. So that's issue number one. Now, I did come across something interesting, and I actually found this white document here where it talks about the two different coatings, right? So Apeel is, and I'm sure if you've followed this topic or you've seen other things, you've heard the mention of Apeel as a company. And Apeel is actually one of the companies that's really safe. What they do is they use a food additive and the fatty acids of food to coat the food before it's sent out, which is why it feels oily and it's kind of gross. And you're like, oh, this is all slimy. It has to be dirty, but it's actually not. It's a high food grade mixture, right? Now, it's all plant oils. So basically, if you were to coat your vegetables and fruits with olive oil or peanut oil or something like that, a little different, higher level, gets in between, it actually stops the degradation, and you don't have to worry about not everybody being allergic to, let's say, peanut oil, for example. So, it kind of breaks down what each one of these are. But this person went into detail to kind of explain, what this was. And again, they couldn't find the ingredients. Now, if you reach out and try to ask about what's in this, they're going to tell you whatever's published is what we've published as the active ingredients. Now, if they're not identifying that, and we are not able to see what those ingredients are, then shouldn't this be a violation? I don't know. I guess that, this is going to be starting to become something that's a norm. And so, we got to take into consideration that. But one other thing, too, I wanted to bring in. So OMRI is a company that registers the information regarding approvals for the current lists. If you look up Apeel, you'll actually see not only is it showing for Apeel, but it also shows for Apeel Sciences, Organipeel, right? And if you click on the certificates for both of these, which I did here, the first certificate that we see here is for the company Apeel, and it puts it in the category of adjuvants for use in crop pesticides. Well, we're not talking about a crop pesticide. We're talking about produce that's being sent in, produce that's already been processed. This is not going on the crops in the field. This is going on the product in the warehouse. The class is crop pest, weed, and disease control. For the use of inert ingredient in combination with permitted active pesticidal ingredients may only be used in the requirements of 205-206 when they're met, which requires the use of preventive mechanical, physical, and other pest, weed, disease management practices. Now, I want you to keep an eye on this little article here, right? Because this is going to come up and to be something important later. We're going to take a look at the other certificate, and this one shows it as a fungicide. Same thing, weed control, but this one gives you a little bit more information, right? So now we're looking at it as organic peel for the company. When used pre-harvest, now again, this is pre-harvest, this is before they're harvested, which is not what they're doing. They're actually placing this on after the fact. May only be used if the requirements of blank are met, which require the use of preventative, mechanical, physical, or other pesticides. So same thing verbatim the other one says. This one goes into further detail. When used in post-harvest handling in raw agricultural commodities, it's not subjected to the requirements of 205-206. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at what 205-206 is. Crop, pest, weed, and disease management practices. So, essentially, if you're out in the field, and farmers know this and most can attest to this, there are ways that we collect our food in the farming process that may or may not be necessarily something to consider the most humane. But when we're using machinery to gather some of the fruits and vegetables, we have to worry about pests, rodents, and other things in that process. So this kind of protects not only us, but it protects the farmers in how they bring it. You can't go too far into the extent, and there's a lot of this here, and I can link all these in the description so you have some more to read. But the problem with this is because this is all done after the fact, None of this really applies to why we should be using this type of fungicide or pesticide. And the fact that it's micro means that it's going past just the peel itself. You're not looking at it just encasing the fruit or vegetable. It's actually going into the peel, it's being absorbed into the fruit, and it's extending the life. Yes, that's something fair to say. It does do that, but it decreases the life of the individual that is consuming this particular product. So as a parent, I don't think that I would ever, one, allow my kids to eat. I don't even buy it. If I see this logo anywhere, I'll actually do a search and find out if the company is associated or partnered with either one of these. And if they are, I will move on to the next fruit or vegetable for the ones that I can't grow myself. But it might be something to think about, open your eyes on, get an idea of, hey, this is some concerns that really do impact you. And when you're looking at pesticides and you're looking at fungicides and you're looking at anything that's outside of the normal growth, right? Plants have a natural process. They create toxins internally to deter animals and bugs and other things from eating it until it's ripe. Once it's ripe, the whole purpose is for them to get eaten because that's how they spread the seeds and that's how they germinate and everything else, right? It's this huge process. Every vegetable, every plant, every flower, everything in existence is different. But if we consume things too early, then not only do we have to worry about whatever they're putting externally onto these things, but we also have to worry about the toxins internally for that. And as many people want to say, oh, I'm a vegetarian, I can't eat meat, or I don't like meat, or meat's bad for you. Your body requires 3 different oils. It requires 16 different vitamins and minerals, and a lot of those aren't found anywhere in the realm of plants, fruits, or otherwise. Some of those are specific to certain proteins and certain meats. So there are some aspects to that statement that are falsely incorrect. Yes, you can get things similar, but at the end of the day, it's very difficult for you to know which one's which. And there's not a lot of information out there, right? And everybody's body is different on the amount of something that it may need. Some people are very deficient in iron and they need to consume iron in high quantities. So there are a few vegetables that have iron, but your biggest source of iron is still going to be, for example, beef liver or chicken liver. It's just honest and bare truth. There are some people who are short in magnesium, potassium. If you happen to get muscle spasms and things like that often, that's something to consider. There are things you can do to change how your body responds and reacts, but it takes some time to learn that process and figure that out. Nobody's going to be perfect at that. Nobody's going to fully understand that or maybe get it right. And it's going to take some time. But this is why we want to stay involved with the consumption of our foods as well as what our children and our family members are eating. And we want to make sure that we are aware. We need to start speaking out to things like this because, while you may ignore and say, oh, it's not a big deal, they put pesticides on everything, this isn't a standard pesticide that they're putting to prevent pests from eating the plants. This is additionally to what they put on it already after it's been pesticided and fungicided and everything else. This is after they've farmed it from the land and they're in the process of shipping it to your table. This is an additive that, in their words, extends the life but decreases the quality of yours because it harms and affects what your body is capable of doing, how your body functions, and how your cells survive. So, I don't know how much more out there and how much more information I can provide to you, but there's a lot of things happening right now that aren't just one-offs. There's a lot of processes that are taking place and people are just completely oblivious because either they're not getting informed correctly or they're missing the information. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is an actual events and breakdowns of what the hell. It really is that simple. So if you're a kid and you watch a lot of videos and you want your parents to see this, please let them know this is your safety and their safety. Nobody wants to see their parent die of some kind of cancer or disease because, God forbid, we don't know what these other ingredients are and what they're going to do to us. and no parent wants to see their child go through that kind of suffering. So, be aware, be alert, always strive for knowledge. And again, we at Dad's Guide to the Galaxy want to make sure you stay informed as much as possible. So if you liked today's video and you like the information we shared, I know it was a little bit all over the place because there's just so much and it's just almost so much mind-boggling. By all means, click the subscribe, click the like, and hit the bell so that way you can be alerted for any new videos. In the meantime, we look forward to our next topic and discussion, but stay and keep learning.